This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
Hi, my name is Pamela Fuselli, and I'm the host of Popping the Bubble Wrap. Are you the person in your family who worries about the safety of others, about buying safety products and using them? Are you yelling, "Yes, that's me"? This is the podcast for you. Raising a child or children can be a hair-raising undertaking, and keeping them safe is a priority. Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast explores what you really need to think about as a parent or caregiver, and provides easy tips on prevention strategies. No bubble wrap here, though. Holidays don't have to be hazardous. And no, I'm not talking about too many chocolates or family get-togethers. Home safety is always top of mind for parents, but your routines change during the holidays. More people are coming over, you're involved with different activities like lighting candles for holiday celebrations, or new products are now in the house, aka presents. So, how do you keep the hazards away but not dampen the celebrations? I'm happy to have Heather, Adam, and Jenna joining me today. Thanks for being part of Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here as well.
Super. One item that's often associated with holidays, especially the ones that happen in colder weather, are candles as part of decorations or religious celebrations. What's been your experience with candles? Do you use them? If you don't, why not? Adam, maybe I'll start with you.
Thanks, Pam. Well, yes, my family does celebrate Hanukkah. So every year we do light candles for 8 nights. The menorah is set up in such a way. I have to tell you that when the religion came into being, I don't think we had these kind of fire hazards in the house, because obviously we're going back a few thousand years ago. They weren't thinking about this, but it's not ideal. The menorah usually there's 8 candles at the bottom, and then there's another candle that's usually at a higher level, and that candle is used to light each one of the other candles on each night. And on top of that, so already, I guess we've got a bit of a fire safety hazard just by having candles lit in a home. You're supposed to put the candles and the menorah on the windowsill of your home to sort of share the joy of the celebration with people walking by. And I remember even as a kid learning that when I went to, sort of parochial school, they sort of encouraged us to do that. That being said, candles are absolutely a fire hazard, and putting them in your windowsill is not the best idea. On top of that, basically you light the candles and then you say a prayer and you usually sing some songs, and then you just kind of leave it be. You leave the menorah as it is lit, and it's supposed to essentially just sort of run its course, which could take a while. Which again is not exactly the best thing when it comes to fire safety. So my kids are a bit older now. I'm not as concerned about it, let's say, as I was when they were younger. But I remember when they were younger, being frankly nervous because they are supposed to be actively involved in the whole process. Even though an adult would typically light the initial candle, what we would do is hold one. I mean, I have 2 kids, so my son or daughter or both of them would have turns holding the candle that lights the other ones and actually doing the lighting on their own or with the hand of an adult together.
Right. You want them to be included, right?
Exactly. So, but I always felt nervous doing it. In fact, even as a kid, it actually made me a little bit nervous when I lit them myself. So if I could sort of go back and turn back time, and I know these things exist today, I would opt for, and I've seen these in other people's homes now, these menorahs that actually have battery operated candles, so that you actually aren't dealing with real life fire. Like I said, my kids are 12 and 14 now, so I'm comfortable with them lighting the candles on their own. But I will tell you that my new practice is after they're lit and after we sort of watch them for a bit, even though technically you're not supposed to, in our house, we actually we blow them out. I don't want them lit. I prefer them not to stay lit. because we all get busy doing other things. And that's just a precaution that we take.
And you could forget about them. And I can imagine in a window, depending on what kind of window coverings you have, curtains or blinds, that would impede, that would definitely be a fire hazard with lit candles.
Yes. And actually what we do typically now is we just light them on the kitchen table so they're not right by a windowsill. And maybe this year, who knows, maybe I'll even opt for the battery operated ones. Just because less potential for fire, I think, is always a better option.
True. Jenna, what's your experience been with your kids? You have a girl who's 10 and some twin boys who are 9. I'm sure they like the idea of fire.
Oh my goodness, I'm getting like chills just imagining all of the ways things could go wrong. We do have one Christmas decoration that is special to my husband and I that we used to take out every year before we had kids, and it's a little wooden windmill that you put these tiny little special candles in, and the heat from the flame turns the windmill around and turns his whole scene. And it's a German heritage, and we bought it on a special trip, and it was one of the first things that got packed away once we had kids. It hasn't come back out yet because it's just, you look at it and you're like, that is just not worth the risk. There's a lot of things that we'd be willing to take some risks on. That is not one of them. And thankfully for us, it wasn't a fundamental part of our celebrations. So it was a bit of an easier decision to be able to say, oh, we'll just pack that away. Right. I really feel for the people, who have, fire and candles as part of their cultural celebrations. That's a really difficult thing to try to figure out how to be safe with all the different hazards and the knowledge that we have now, right? But I love hearing those stories of, different ways that people have come around to, battery operated. We have a lot of those little battery operated tea lights that we use for things, for decoration around the holidays. And we're in that stage now. Like you said, our daughter is 10, and we've had to start watching to make sure that she's right at that age. And I remember it very well where you're like, oh, candles are so pretty and incense could burn. And it's like, oh, no, let's make sure that everything, there's no candles in rooms. There's no, anything like that has to stay in, on the kitchen table somewhere where we can keep watch. We make sure it's put out. And, we've added a cat to the mix now. And I can't imagine any flame being a safe bet for us this holiday season.
Yeah, I was thinking about, candles on coffee tables with dogs' tails wagging by. Like, there's so many different scenarios here. Heather, what is any of this sounding familiar to you?
So very familiar. I loved candles growing up, especially like Jenna said, as a teen and early 20s, you have candles galore and you think it's the most beautiful thing. But as soon as I had kids, I could not relax having them around. We did a total 180 and we packed away our candles in one move and we never got them out in the subsequent, I think, 4 moves that we've done since. We put them on top of the birthday cakes and that's it. And, like Jenna, we have 2 cats and a dog as well now. Even though our kids are older, we're not ready to bring back the candles. And I even get a little bit nervous when it comes to the batteries and the mini tea lights. So our big go-to is like using those mini LED lights on the strings, the fairy light kind of things. We do a little essential oil diffuser. Nothing's burning, no flame. It's the only way my poor brain can rest.
Well, and you bring up a good point. There's so many different products now and choices on the market that you can still enjoy what a candle brings without the fear of the flame being accessible from your kids, their dog, the tail, the cat that, has the curiosity. But I think all of you brought up something that's, sometimes we think about more during the holidays and especially with new toys or new products in the house, so many items that we buy these days have batteries. they have, and especially those little button batteries, but also other small parts that, depending on the age of your child, that they can cause serious injuries if they, kids explore the world by putting things in their mouths. And, if you've got an older sibling that has toys that have smaller parts, they may be lying around. But if we look at the button batteries, because this is an issue that's come up more recently over the last year or so, but it's always been a concern. I just think that more products have these button batteries. I mean, you talked about the tea lights, but they also come in greeting cards if you have one of those annoying cards that play music that someone has given you, but also toys that come with batteries. How have you dealt with some of the toys and products that come with these batteries? And Heather, you kind of, we left off, you had talked about that. Maybe you want to weigh in here.
Yeah, for sure. I remember with my oldest, when there's only one around, it's not that big of an issue. And I think you nailed it on the head when you said the older siblings. Once there's other siblings around, you lose the control of your environment. They've got friends over. There's all of a sudden a lot more bodies and a lot more contributions to the toys and batteries in the household. So I definitely realized when my second was born that our vigilance had to go way up. And it was a really important thing for us to teach our older daughter. There's 4 years between them. So she was old enough to start understanding that you really need to keep your toys away from your sister, kind of help be mommy's helper to make sure that these little choky things don't get anywhere near your little sister. And she, luckily to my advantage, she loved being a big sister. She loved being mommy's little helper. So yeah, we just enlisted the aid of everyone around us to kind of, be aware of what's going on, because it's definitely, you can't keep your eyes on them 24/7. So for us, it was a matter of, talking to them and letting everyone in your circle know, this is what we're looking out for. Here's some hazards, just really talking was the big thing for us.
Yeah. Adam, the batteries, I know I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago about why is it so hard to get into the battery packages? And that's actually part of the protection of accessing batteries, kids accessing batteries, is the packaging. And we've seen products and toys. Some of them come that you actually have to unscrew the battery compartment to get into the battery, which helps to keep little hands off of batteries. But have you, if you're thinking about going to battery operated, or were your kids ever interested in how things work and, pulling things apart that they might access little button batteries?
Absolutely. My son in particular was really, he's still like that. he's still like, things don't change all that much. No, I remember, this is a funny thing about kids, that that when they get a gift, the thing that fascinates them the most isn't the gift itself, but it's the box and the packaging.
Yep.
But the reality is that the box and the packaging can be hazards. The box can be sharp. The bubble wrap can be sharp, or can have, it pops, it can scare the kids. There's other things. So those are always a little bit of a concern. And sometimes they did need help with them. It's funny, this makes me a little bit kind of romanticize the past, but I remember having toys as a kid, like let's say trucks or cars, that did not have any battery. And I remember having a lot of fun with them. So I don't think that it's so important for these toys to have batteries. Kids can find ways to entertain themselves doing it the old-fashioned way. If they can have fun with the box, then why not have fun with a truck or a car or a doll or whatever? It could be anything. Just using it in a manual way. It's just an idea about a little bit of going back to the past, but maybe going back to the past might be a little bit safer.
I do remember the disappointment on Christmas Day when I got something that required a battery and the battery was not included, and my parents had forgotten to buy the batteries for that item. So maybe that is one of the options. Jenna, or mostly you know what products you have in your toys you have in your house, but you also have visitors coming in with like purses and bags and things like that. So there's, you know, not only do you have to think about, you know, what you have in the house, but what people are also bringing into the house. Have you had any scares with button batteries, or do your kids pay any attention to them?
Our kids were pretty good with things like that, thankfully. And I think part of the reason was we did everything we could to avoid having them in the first place, kind of to Adam's point. You know, we were, especially when we were expecting our daughter, we were in that like overprotective first parent stage. And we went to all the classes and read all the books and did all the things. And one session that we went to, really stuck with us, and it was actually about, you know, language learning with your infant and how important it was to speak with them. And the instructor talked about how damaging some of these infant toys can be because they set the volume so loud on them when they make noise. And her advice to us, while we were still expecting, was, you know, turn off the sound, take the batteries out if they come with them. Don't let your kid have these things with loud noises in them when they're little. So before our daughter ever got her first gift, we were taking batteries out, we were turning things on, and we were all for it. And we had the first grandchild in both families. So we were telling our parents and our siblings, look, we'd really appreciate if we didn't get these really loud, you know, mechanical things. So, of course, our families found the loudest possible wooden clacking toys to give us, which I think was a very fair compromise of us being overprotective parents going, oh, no, we don't want the toys that make noise with batteries. So you know, be careful what you wish for. But
I was going to say, and now all your siblings who have had kids after you are returning the favor, shall we say?
Of course. but it's true. You know, all those toys that a lot of us grew up with that were wooden toys or plush toys or just dinkies and whatever, they don't have to have all the bells and whistles and make noise and have flashing lights until the kids are older, where you can have those kind of conversations and be a little bit more careful with things like batteries.
Yeah, and it's amazing how those little button batteries can do a lot of damage if they're swallowed and you don't get treatment right away. So I think there's a lot of parents listening that are, you know, have very similar experiences that you all have talked about today. So thank you so much for sharing your experience, your concerns, your strategies around keeping your kids safe around the holiday season. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Learn how to holiday safely. Read about common holiday hazards and how to avoid them at parachute.ca/holiday safety. That's parachute.ca/holiday safety.
It's time to open your parachute.
Stephanie Cowle is Parachute's Director, Knowledge Translation, and she has spent more than a decade working in the area of injury and trauma prevention. Welcome to Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast, Steph.
Hi, Pam. Great to be here.
Excellent. So we had an interesting conversation with parents around their holiday activities and some of the injuries that we see happening in this space because of changes to our environment, but also different traditions, technology as solutions. You know, what did you hear that really caught your ear, as it were, with the parents talking about what they do around the holidays to keep their kids safe?
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear the stories about how their holiday traditions and observances have changed around the ages of their children. So just like you're changing your environment, maybe, you know, you're going through and childproofing and changing other aspects of your home, also maybe going about changing the way that you're doing things. And, you know, as much as we think about tradition as being long-standing and non-changing, it really does change over time. You know, the observances that our homes are different compared to the thousands of years ago when some of these traditions were started is so true. You know, the way that our homes and our furniture are built now, those materials are just set to go up in flames compared to old times. So being aware of, safety factors around some of these things like candles are really important. So it was nice to hear of, some of the changes, some of the creative solutions, whether it's just in your home or in the types of products that are offered out there right now. Lots of talk about, candle solutions. And, I remember years and years ago what fake battery operated candles look like. And now they're so realistic with their flickering, and they're looking, and some of them are scented and looking beautiful. So, as these things evolve, there are lots of opportunities to still build in these memories and traditions, but being aware of ways to put hazards away.
Yeah, and candles, I think, really, are synonymous with some of the holidays. The innovations that candles, as you said, have taken have made it such that you can still get the majority of the result that you want from a real candle. And I guess that kind of ties in a little bit to, some of the other flame or fire kind of injuries that we see, like burns and scalds related to cooking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, as you know, Pam, burns and scalds are one of the leading causes of injury and very serious injury with younger children in particular. And of course, living in a country like Canada with our long and dark and sometimes really dreary winters, a lot of what we do, whether it's around the holidays or just over the winter season, involves a lot of light and warmth. So whether it's lighting candles, lighting the fireplace, cooking your favorite comfort foods, cooking traditional foods when you're together with family, all these come with a certain amount of risk to be aware of when it comes to heat and flames and hot substances around children. So particularly being in and around the kitchen and things get really busy there, being aware of some of the hazards there. So, keeping young children away from hot stoves and ovens, even when you turn that oven off, it stays quite hot for a while. So keeping them away from those surfaces, whether it's, if someone can supervise them in another room, or if it's, strapping them in their high chair so they can still hang out with you and be part of those transitions is a great option as well. Keeping pots and kettles and other really tempting things away from edges. So, pushing things back on counters, keeping pots on the back burners, keeping handles turned away, all those little things. So perhaps if you were to squat on the floor of your kitchen and look up and see all the tempting things above you, keeping those away from little eyes and hands.
There's been, speaking of innovations in products, things like the kettles and toasters. If anyone's been frustrated with the short length of a toaster or a kettle cord, that has been partially due to preventing scald burns from those appliances. And I think probably people will be interested or maybe surprised that, hot liquids like hot coffee, hot tea actually are a source of scald burns for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really common source. So, if you are going to have hot liquids, keeping those away from little ones, again, keeping them away from the edge, or if you're going to be, snuggling with your kid, carrying your kid around, putting down that hot drink, putting that away so they're not grabbing at it. Again, you may think that I can handle all of these things and I'm multitasking and walking, but kids are so unpredictable and they love to grab. So yes. Removing that temptation or that potential consequence is a good idea.
Yeah. If you have to have your coffee or tea, make sure you use one of those cups that has a lid that's non-spill that you can keep shut, but still have a sip every once in a while.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great gift idea.
True.
Also having a working fire extinguisher in the kitchen area in the home, really important. Maybe something you think you may never have to use, but it's one of those, in the situation, you're going to want to have it on hand. But keeping that in the kitchen, but keeping it away from the stove area is best. You don't want to be lunging towards a stove fire, trying to get the fire extinguisher at the time. So keeping it reachable, but not in the line of fire in your home.
Right. That's a really good tip. One of the things we talked about with parents was about the gifts or the different products that might be brought into their homes around the holidays, and many of them having batteries, those little button batteries that are in so many products that we find in our home, whether they're children's toys or key fobs or hearing aids or greeting cards. They can be really dangerous. Can you talk to me a little bit about, what people can do to prevent those from getting into little hands, and a couple of tips on how to respond if it does happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure how aware the general public is about the actual damage these little tiny batteries can do. So children tend to swallow them or insert them. Kids like putting things in places up the nose and the ear. And the acid in these batteries do serious damage to internal tissue that can start within a couple hours or so. And we've seen horrific injuries and even deaths due to these incidents. So button batteries is certainly something we want to keep away from kids. So if you have batteries in the house in a package, even dead batteries, those are still active in terms of causing damage. Keep all your batteries stored well away from kids. Buy products that have those sealed battery compartments. It is a pain to have to bust out the screwdriver to change the batteries. But just like we talked about the kettle cords, it's there for a reason. We don't want kids accessing those compartments. And we've heard stories of siblings feeding a button battery to a younger sibling, treating it like candy. So these are really things we need to keep away from kids. Now, in the case that your child does swallow or insert a button battery, this is something we want to treat as an emergency. So we don't want to wait around and find out if it's going to pass through them. Oh, we're not really sure. That's a situation where you want to call 911 or get to an emergency department right away. You want to communicate that you think they've swallowed a button battery, because that will help the medical team know that they need to respond really quickly. One of the newer evolutions in care for this type of incident that's really interesting that you and I have been learning about, Pam, is this new recommendation that while you're on the way to get emergency care, and this should not delay emergency care, but while you're on the way, if possible, giving children a little bit of honey can help delay the damage that the acid will do. And we have more detailed information about that on the Parachute website as well. I think you can find through the Canadian Pediatric Society. So it's something I recommend parents reading up about.
Great. Thanks. So much information, so much key information that I think parents will really appreciate having in their back pocket. So as the holiday season comes around, they can take a look around their homes and anticipate some of these potential hazards and take some steps to prevent these types of injuries from happening. So thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Pam, and wishing everyone safe and happy holidays.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Popping the Bubble Wrap is a podcast of Parachute, Canada's national injury prevention charity, whose mission is for Canadians to live long lives to the fullest by preventing serious and fatal injuries. Normally, we release episodes every 2 weeks, but we're taking a break over the holidays, and we'll be back the second week of January. Join us on our next episode where we ask the question, do cannabis and parenting mix? Help us reach parents and caregivers by sharing this link with your friends and family and giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts.
Popping the Bubble Wrap is produced for Parachute by Story Studio Network and Eye Contact Productions.
This is Story Studio Network.